Well, in Canada, a prominent tribal chief says she will end her 6-week hunger strike over Aboriginal rights. Theresa Spence made the decision after opposition parties and Indigenous leaders signed a declaration spelling out 13 specific demands they will present to the government. The declaration calls for improvements to housing and schools on reservations. It also calls for an immediate meeting between the Crown, the federal and provincial governments, and all First Nations to discuss treaty and non-treaty related relationships. Spence launched the hunger strike in December to pressure the government into meeting the Aboriginals' demands. Her decision spurred a grassroots protest across the country. And for more on the plight of Aboriginals in Canada, we're now joined by Joshua Blakeney, our correspondent who's with us from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Joshua, how significant is Theresa Spence's decision to stop her hunger strike? And also tell us more about her 13-point plan and the likeliness that the Harper government will consider this declaration.
Well, Chief Theresa Spence is the chief of a menaced and endangered First Nation in Canada, the Attawapiskat First Nation, who are having the resources that lie underneath their historic territories despoiled by one of the most prominent multinationals in the world. And obviously Chief Theresa Spence came to Ottawa, took a stand on behalf of her people and on behalf of all Aboriginal peoples, and now has managed to get the leading opposition parties in the Canadian Parliament to consent to a 13-point list of demands. Some of these demands are quite radical. For example, for the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It was very revealing that in 2007, when that declaration was made, that Australia, Canada, the United States and New Zealand were the only countries that refrained from endorsing that declaration in the United Nations. And of course, they all have the skeletons in their closets of the Aboriginal questions in those respective countries. Another radical demand sheet that's been made in this 13-point declaration is for the implementation and enforcement of Canadian Aboriginal and treaty rights. You see, the Canadian Constitution has this lofty statement in Section 35 that says Aboriginal and treaty rights are hereby recognized and affirmed, and that's supposed to be the supreme law of Canada. But you never see a politician or a police chief or a CEO of a corporation being arrested for not respecting Aboriginal rights. So we have a lofty statement in the law in Canada, but we never see that being enforced. So that's one of the demands being made in this 13-point plan. There's also a call for an investigation into the missing women. Canada has over 600 missing Aboriginal women. Where have they gone? There are theories that obviously perhaps elites have a vested interest in covering up some of these murders of prostitutes and so on. And I think that Theresa Spence is keen to see an objective and impartial inquiry into what's going on vis-a-vis Aboriginal women in this country. Theresa Spence has demanded that Canada's First Nations are going to be treated on a nation-to-nation basis. Many First Nations would like to envisage a Canada comparable to the European Union, where you have different sovereign nations relating to each other on a nation-to-nation basis. That hasn't been how the Harper government has been treating Canada's Indigenous peoples. The Harper government has been seeking to delve into the internal affairs of Canada's Aboriginal peoples and kind of decide the fate of them on their behalf in a kind of paternalistic way that they don't like. And so there's many radical demands being made by Theresa Spence.
All right, thank you very much. Joshua Blakeney, Press TV's correspondent from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. That's a wrap for the program. I hope you enjoyed Press TV's Top 5, but don't go away. Sports is coming right up next. Amir Hossein joins us now from the sports desk with a preview. Amir, I believe that the Australian Open is in its final stages, and surely we've seen our fair share of action. Do you think that the first Grand